The battlefield was a wasteland. Human soldiers, tired and bloodied, stood in the ruins of what had once been a thriving colony. Alien ships hovered above, firing down lasers that cut through the night. The humans were losing, and the end seemed near. But amidst the chaos, something strange happened. A transmission came through. It wasn't from the usual channels of the human command. This signal was different. Static crackled through the air, followed by a calm, measured voice that filled the soldiers' earpieces. "Soldiers of Earth," the voice began, "if you are hearing this, then it means I have failed. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and we are mere pawns in its endless war. But do not despair. I have left you something that will change the course of this battle." The soldiers froze. The voice sounded familiar. It was the voice of the alien king, the powerful and ancient ruler whose forces had recently been defeated in battle. His death had been a shock to everyone, especially to the human soldiers who had fought against him and his army for years. They had always believed that he would continue to lead his alien forces forever. But now he was gone. "I, King Zirin," the voice continued, "have made one last move. I have left you an incredible legacy. It is my gift to you, humanity." Strange hum filled the air, and the transmission flickered before continuing. The soldiers exchanged confused glances. Some were still on edge from the battle, while others were simply too tired to understand what was happening. The voice of the king, however, carried on, more solemn now. "I have chosen an ally for you," the voice said. "She is not of your kind, but she will stand by you. Her name is Seraphine. She is an alien vampire, unlike any you've encountered. I trust you will use her strength and wisdom to defeat the enemies who remain. But remember this. She is a part of my legacy, and her fate is tied to yours." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving a lingering silence. The soldiers stood in stunned disbelief. A vampire? An alien vampire? It didn't make sense. How could a creature like that help them? But the alien king's message was clear. Seraphine was their last hope. For a moment, the soldiers didn't know what to do. They were still reeling from the surprise of hearing from the dead king, and the idea of an alien vampire on their side seemed impossible. But they had little choice. The war had drained their resources, and without help, they would lose. "Where is she?" Sergeant Williams asked, his voice uncertain. He looked to his fellow soldiers, waiting for an answer. The radio crackled again, and the voice of their commander came through. "She's on her way. Get to the landing zone. We're about to meet her." The soldiers didn't hesitate. Despite the uncertainty, they rallied quickly, preparing for the arrival of their mysterious new ally. They knew the stakes they were fighting, not only for their survival, but for the future of humanity itself. Minutes later, the sky lit up as a ship descended from the heavens. The craft was sleek and black, its design unlike anything the humans had ever seen. It hovered silently before touching down, and the hatch opened with a soft hiss. From the shadows emerged Seraphine. She was tall and slender, movements graceful as she stepped onto the dirt. Her skin shimmered with a soft glow, pale yet somehow radiant. Her eyes, dark and glowing with an eerie intensity, scanned the soldiers, and for a moment everything felt still. Time seemed to freeze, as if the world was holding its breath. Seraphine's gaze lingered on the soldiers for a long moment. There was something about her, something ancient, something powerful. But there was also a sadness in her eyes, a sense of loss. "I am Seraphine," she said, her voice like velvet, smooth and cold. "I come in the name of King Zirin. His legacy is now mine to carry." The soldiers stood in awe. They had been prepared for anything, but they were not prepared for her. She was a vision out of a nightmare, and yet there was something about her that felt different. To help them. Or at least that was what the king had said. "We are at your service," Williams said, stepping forward. He felt uneasy but tried to maintain a confident tone. Seraphine nodded, acknowledging his words. "I will fight with you. But know this, my strength is not like anything you have seen before. I am a creature of the night, and I will show you the power that lies in the darkness." The soldiers exchanged nervous looks. They had no idea what they were getting into, but they had no choice. This alien vampire Seraphine was their last chance, as the night grew darker. The first signs of the alien enemy appeared on the horizon. The soldiers, now standing alongside Seraphine, prepared for battle. They didn't fully understand her power, but they knew one thing: they needed her. The alien invasion was upon them. The fate of humanity rested in their hands. The air around the human soldiers grew tense as they stood together in the darkened field. Seraphine, the alien vampire woman, had just stepped off the strange black ship that had landed in front of them. The soldiers stared at her in awe. She was unlike anything they had ever seen, and a wave of unease swept over them. Seraphine stood tall, her pale skin almost glowing under the moonlight. Her eyes, dark and filled with an unsettling power, scanned the group of soldiers. Her beauty was undeniable, but there was something about her that made the air feel heavy. A mix of fear and curiosity filled the soldiers' hearts. They had just received a message from the alien king, and now they were face to face with his legacy. Seraphine's gaze lingered on each of them, as if she was weighing them, judging them. It was as if she could see right through them. The silence was broken only by the sounds of distant explosions and the crackling of radio static. "Do not fear me," Seraphine finally spoke, her voice smooth and cold like silk. "I am not here to harm you. I come in peace, though I understand that may be difficult for you to believe." Her words were calm, but they carried an authority that demanded respect. The soldiers stood, frozen in place, unsure of how to respond. "Was chosen by King Xiren to aid you in your fight," she continued. "His death was not the end. It was a beginning. You are now a part of something much larger than you can imagine." Seraphine's words were filled with mystery, and the soldiers struggled to make sense of what she was saying. They had been told she was a vampire, a creature of darkness, and yet here she was, offering them her help. Sergeant Williams, the leader of the group, stepped forward. He was the first to speak since Seraphine's arrival. "What exactly do you mean by that?" His voice was steady, but the doubt in his eyes was clear. Seraphine met his gaze with a look of understanding. "The galaxy is a dangerous place. King Xiren knew this, and he knew that humanity would need more than just weapons to survive. You need strength, yes, but you also need something else. You need unity. You need allies who are not of your world." She paused, as if considering her next words carefully. "I am not just a weapon. I am a link between your people and forces you cannot yet comprehend. The king's legacy is the key to understanding this connection." Williams and the soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. It was hard to fully trust Seraphine. She was an alien, and vampires were supposed to be myths. But something in her presence told them that they had no choice but to listen. "We've fought aliens before," Williams said, "but we've never faced anything like you. What makes you think we can work together?" Seraphine's eyes softened, and she took a step forward. "I understand your hesitation. I'm not asking for your trust immediately. I'm asking for your cooperation. The war you've been fighting is only a small part of what's to come. There are forces out there that will stop at nothing to destroy humanity." The soldiers shifted uneasily. They knew the alien threat was immense, but they hadn't realized how much worse it could get. Seraphine's words echoed in their minds. "There are forces that will stop at nothing."
Ow.
It sounded like a warning, and a very real one. "We have no time to waste," Seraphine added. "I will show you what I can do, but I will also need your help." "This battle is not mine alone." Sergeant Williams nodded, reluctantly agreeing. "All right, we're in this together, but we need to know more. What can you do? How can you help us?" Seraphine's lips curled into a slight smile, though it wasn't one of warmth. It was a smile that came from centuries of experience and power. "I am stronger than anything you've encountered. My strength lies not only in my physical abilities, but in my connection to the dark energy of the galaxy. I can tap into that energy and use it to fight back against the enemies that threaten your people. But that's not all." Soldiers leaned in, their curiosity growing. "I am also a healer," she continued. I have the ability to mend wounds, to heal what others cannot. But I can only do this if you trust me enough to let me." The soldiers were stunned. They had been told nothing of Seraphine's healing powers, and the idea that an alien vampire could cure their injuries seemed unreal. But they knew they had little choice but to believe her. "All right," Williams said, his voice filled with determination. "We'll work with you. But we'll need to see these powers in action." Seraphine nodded. "Of course. But first, let us prepare for the coming storm. The enemy is already on their way, and we must be ready." As the soldiers gathered their weapons and made preparations for the battle ahead, Seraphine stood silently, watching them with those dark, powerful eyes. The bond between them, though new and fragile, was forming. They didn't yet fully understand her or her abilities, but they knew one thing for sure. They were to survive the coming war. They would need Seraphine. And as the night grew darker, and the first signs of the alien fleet appeared on the horizon, the soldiers and Seraphine stood together, ready to face whatever was coming. The sun began to rise, casting a pale light over the soldiers who had gathered at their post. They had only a few hours to prepare before the alien fleet arrived. The night had been spent in silence, with Seraphine watching over them, her presence both comforting and unsettling. Though the soldiers had not fully trusted her, they were beginning to see her not as an enemy, but as an ally. The king's final words still echoed in their minds. "Her strength will help you survive." Sergeant Williams paced back and forth, checking the weapons and equipment. His mind was racing. How could an alien vampire help them? Could they rely on her? He had seen the devastation caused by alien invaders before, and he knew that this battle would be like no other. "I don't like this," Private Carson muttered, looking at Seraphine. "I've never fought alongside someone like her." Williams glanced over at Seraphine, who stood apart from the group. Her dark eyes were fixed on the horizon, as if she was already aware of the incoming threat. Despite her strange and intimidating appearance, there was something about her that made the soldiers uneasy. They had been fighting alien forces for years, but this was different. Seraphine was unlike any enemy they had faced, yet if the king's message was true, they had no choice but to trust her. "We don't have a choice," Williams replied, his voice firm. "We need her." "The king said we do?" Carson nodded, though his unease was evident. "I hope he's right." Seraphine turned her head toward them, sensing their conversation. "You doubt me," she said softly, her voice like a whisper in the wind. "It is natural. But trust must be earned, and I will show you that I am not your enemy." Her words were calm, but there was an edge to them that reminded the soldiers of the danger they faced. Seraphine stepped forward, moving toward the edge of the camp where a few soldiers were preparing the defense systems. "I can help you fight," she continued. "But remember, I do not belong to your world. I was created for another purpose. I was made to be a weapon, but I have learned that there is more to life than destruction. The king saw that, which is why he chose me." Williams walked up to her, his face hard with determination. "You don't have time for stories. We need results. The enemy is almost here." Seraphine nodded. "Then let us prepare." The soldiers worked in a tense silence, setting up barriers and checking their equipment. The alien fleet was approaching fast. The radar systems had already picked up the enemy ships, and the soldiers could see the dark shapes of the craft in the sky. The sound of engines filled the air as the fleet began to descend. "We're running out of time," Carson said, his voice tight with fear. "What if this is all a trick? What if she's leading us into a trap?" "She's not," Williams said, though he wasn't entirely sure. "The king wouldn't have given us false hope. We'll have to trust her." The alien ships began to land, their metal frames reflecting the weak sunlight. The soldiers took their positions, gripping their weapons tightly. Seraphine stood with them, her dark eyes focused on the approaching ships. She seemed calm, almost detached, as if she had seen this countless times before. When the first of the enemy soldiers disembarked, the battle began. The alien invaders were unlike anything the humans had faced before. They were tall, with dark armor that seemed to absorb the light. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural energy, and their movements were swift and deadly. They began firing on the soldiers as soon as they landed. The soldiers fought back fiercely, but the alien enemies were powerful. Their advanced technology gave them an edge, and the humans were pushed back. For a moment, it seemed as though the battle was already lost, but then Seraphine moved, with a speed that seemed impossible. She darted forward, her body a blur as she leapt into the fray. She raised her hands, and a dark energy pulsed around her. The aliens, who had been advancing, stopped in their tracks. The air seemed to grow colder, and the soldiers watched in awe as Seraphine raised her arm. Dark tendrils of energy shot out from her, wrapping around the alien invaders. With a swift movement, she pulled them toward her. Using the dark power at her command, the soldiers stood stunned for a moment, watching as Seraphine fought. Her speed, her strength, and the way she manipulated the dark energy were unlike anything they had ever seen. It was as if she was a force of nature herself, unstoppable and lethal. One by one, the alien invaders fell, their armor shattered by Seraphine's attacks. Her movements were graceful but deadly, and the soldiers began to feel a sense of awe and fear. How could someone like her exist? The battle raged on, but with Seraphine's help, the tide began to turn. The soldiers fought harder, inspired by the vampire's power. They worked together, using their new ally's strength to push the invaders back. The alien fleet, which had seemed so unstoppable moments before, was now faltering. Seraphine's power was immense, but it was not without cost. After each strike, she seemed to grow weaker, her energy draining. She was not invincible. She had limits, and the soldiers could see that. But she fought on, unwilling to stop, until the last enemy was defeated. Finally, after what seemed like hours, the battle came to an end. The alien invaders were defeated, their ships scattered across the battlefield. The soldiers, though exhausted, were victorious. They had survived thanks to Seraphine's strength. As the dust settled, Sergeant Williams approached her. He had seen her fight with an intensity and power that left him in awe. "You kept your promise," he said quietly. "You helped us win." Seraphine nodded, her eyes tired but steady. "I did what I could, but the war is far from over. There will be more battles, and you will need more than just my strength. You will need unity. You will need each other." The soldiers stood together, exhausted but alive. They had fought alongside an alien vampire, and together they had won. But the war was not over. The galaxy was still full of dangers, and they knew that the greatest challenges were still ahead. The battle had been fierce, and the soldiers were still reeling from the intensity of the fight. The ground around them was scarred, the remains of alien ships scattered across the battlefield like twisted metal. The smell of burning fuel lingered in the air, and the soldiers stood in stunned silence, their adrenaline slowly fading. Sergeant Williams walked among them, making sure everyone was accounted for. He was tired, but there was no time to rest. The war was far from over. As he approached the camp, he noticed Seraphine standing off to the side, staring at the horizon. Her expression was unreadable, and her eyes seemed distant. As though lost in thought, Williams had seen her fight. Her power was undeniable. The way she had used the dark energy to defeat the alien invaders had left him in awe. But there were still so many questions he needed answers to. What was Seraphine really? What did the king mean when he spoke of her as part of his legacy? He approached her cautiously, not wanting to disturb her but knowing he had to ask the questions that had been haunting him. "Seraphine," Williams began, his voice low. She turned to face him, her eyes meeting his with a quiet intensity. "Is it, Sergeant?" "I need to know more," Williams said. "About you, about the king. Why did he choose you to help us? What is this legacy he spoke of?" Seraphine was silent for a moment, as if contemplating her next words carefully. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but steady. The king was not just a ruler, he was a visionary. He saw the future of the galaxy, and he knew that humanity would be at the center of it. But the galaxy is a dangerous place, full of enemies, who would stop at nothing to destroy you. Williams listened intently, his mind racing. But why you? Why did the king trust you with his legacy? Seraphine took a deep breath, her gaze never leaving his. I was not born like the others of my kind. I was created by people. The vampires are a race that thrives on darkness and power. But the king, he saw something in me that others did not. He saw potential. I was made to be a weapon, a tool for destruction. But I chose to be more than that. The king understood this, and that is why he trusted me with his final command. Williams furrowed his brow, trying to make sense of her words. You were created a weapon? Seraphine nodded slowly. Yes, but I have learned to use my abilities for something greater.
Oh.
The king saw the power in me, but he also saw my desire for change. He knew that humanity would need someone like me to survive the threats that lay ahead. I am not just a soldier. I am a bridge between your world and the unknown forces that threaten it. Williams looked at her with new understanding. He had known that Seraphine was powerful, but hearing her speak of her origins made him realize just how complex she was. She wasn't just a weapon, she was something more. The king had trusted her to guide humanity through the darkest of times. I don't understand, Williams said, shaking his head. What? Why did he leave us with this legacy? What does he expect us to do with it? Seraphine's eyes grew darker, her expression serious. The king knew that humanity would be tested in ways you cannot yet imagine. The legacy he left was not just a gift. It was a challenge. You are meant to rise above the threats that have plagued this galaxy, to unite with other beings, like myself, to face the coming storm. Williams took a step back, his mind spinning. And what storm is that? A storm that will destroy everything if we do not stop it, Seraphine said, her voice filled with a quiet urgency. The galaxy is on the brink of collapse. There are forces out. There are forces that even the king could not defeat alone. You must unite with the others. With those like me, to survive. Williams felt a chill run down his spine. The weight of Seraphine's words hung heavily in the air. The war they had been fighting, the battles they had survived, were only the beginning. It was something far greater, far more dangerous, waiting for them in the shadows. We're not ready for this, Williams muttered, more to himself. Then to Seraphine, you will be, she replied, her tone firm. That is why I am here, to help you prepare. Seraphine's words settled in Williams's mind like a heavy burden. The alien invaders they had fought so far were nothing compared to what was coming. The galaxy was vast, and humanity was just a small part of it. The forces Seraphine spoke of, forces that even the king could not defeat alone, sounded terrifying. But he knew that he had no choice but to trust her. She was their only chance. We'll do whatever it takes, Williams said, his voice filled with determination. We'll fight. Seraphine nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. That is all I ask. The soldiers gathered around them, having overheard parts of the conversation. They were tired, some of them injured, but they were ready to continue. They had come this far, and they weren't about to stop now. Seraphine turned to face them, her dark eyes scanning each of them. You are stronger than you know. Together, you will face what is to come. But remember, this is not just a fight for survival. This is a fight for the future of the galaxy. The soldiers stood a little taller, their resolve strengthened by Seraphine's words. They didn't fully understand everything she had said, but they knew one thing. They could not do this alone. Seraphine was their ally, their protector. They would need her strength to survive the trials ahead. As the sun set on the battlefield, soldiers and Seraphine stood together, ready for whatever came next. The king's legacy had been passed to them, and now it was up to them to carry it forward. The night was filled with tension as the soldiers prepared for what was to come. They had won the previous battle, but the victory felt like a fleeting moment. The reality of the situation was setting in. The alien threat was far from over, and the mysterious forces Seraphine had warned them about still loomed on the horizon. Sergeant Williams stood at the front of the camp, his mind heavy with everything he had learned. Seraphine had told them the truth about the legacy the alien king had left behind, a legacy that came with a promise and a warning. The galaxy was full of enemies far more dangerous than the ones they had already faced. and humanity would need all the help it could get to survive. Beside him, Seraphine stood with her arms crossed, her dark eyes scanning the horizon. The dark energy she controlled was still lingering in the air, a silent reminder of the power she wielded. The soldiers had seen her fight, but they still didn't fully understand her abilities. There was so much more to her than they could comprehend. "Do we prepare for what's coming?" Private Carson asked, breaking the silence. He stood next to Williams, his face lined with exhaustion but determination. "We train, we unite," Williams replied. "We'll need to be ready for anything, Seraphine. We'll need you." Seraphine nodded, her gaze never leaving the distance. "I will fight with you as I always have. But remember, this is not just about fighting. The battle ahead is as much about understanding your enemies as it is about defeating them." The soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. They had been trained to fight, to destroy, but what Seraphine spoke of was something different. It wasn't just about winning battles. It was about preparing for something bigger. "I've fought in wars across galaxies," Sergeant Seraphine continued, her voice calm. "I know the forces that move in the shadows. They are patient, calculating, and relentless. If you are to win, you must be more than soldiers. You must become something greater." Williams listened closely, his heart heavy with the weight of her words. They had always been soldiers, fighting for survival. But what Seraphine was saying meant something else, something far beyond what they had ever been trained for. "Do you think we're ready for that?" Carson asked. Seraphine didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned to face the group, her eyes scanning each of the soldiers in turn. "You are ready," she said quietly. "You have the strength within you. You just need to unlock it." Together, Williams nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about fighting off an alien invasion anymore. This was about something much larger. The survival of humanity was at stake, and they were going to need every advantage they could get. As the soldiers gathered their weapons and began to prepare for another fight, Seraphine stayed behind, her focus unwavering. She had known war, pain, and loss. She had seen the destruction that followed the rise of powerful forces, and now she was determined to stop it. "They're coming," Seraphine said suddenly, her voice low but clear. "The fleet is nearing. We must be ready."
Oh, the big the God is the God of the God of the wand was what Bob
Soldiers immediately sprang into action, the urgency in their movements reflecting the seriousness of Seraphine's words. They had been training for moments like this, but they had never been prepared for the kind of war they were about to face. The sound of engines filled the air as the alien fleet began to descend. This time there was no hesitation. The soldiers took their positions, each of them knowing that this battle could very well determine the future of their people. "We hold our ground," Williams ordered, his voice steady. "We've come this far. Now we make our stand." The first wave of alien ships touched down, their dark shapes looming against the sky. The soldiers opened fire, but this time they weren't alone. Seraphine stood at their side, her dark energy flowing around her like a living force. With a single gesture, she sent a wave of energy toward the approaching alien ships. Tearing through their defenses, the soldiers watched in awe as Seraphine unleashed her power. It was unlike anything they had seen before. The alien ships trembled as the dark energy struck them, and one by one, they began to fall from the sky. But this was only the beginning. The ground shook as more alien ships descended, These were different, larger, more heavily armored. They were not just soldiers, they were commanders, leaders in this invasion. The real battle had begun. Seraphine's power surged again as she rushed forward, her body moving with incredible speed. The soldiers followed her lead, their training kicking in as they fired on the approaching invaders. The aliens fought back fiercely. But the humans had the advantage of Seraphine's strength and the element of surprise, despite their power. The alien commanders were not prepared for the combined might of the human soldiers and their new ally. Seraphine's energy tore through their forces, and for the first time, the humans were winning. But as the battle raged on, it became clear that the fight was far from over. The alien commanders had one final trick up their sleeve. From the depths of their ships, they released a new weapon, an enormous, towering creature, an ancient war machine that seemed to be made of living metal and energy. The soldiers watched in horror as the creature advanced, its massive form blocking out the sky. This was no ordinary enemy. This was a force of destruction. Seraphine turned to the soldiers, her face grim. "This is what I was afraid of. They've unleashed their true weapon. We must stop it, or we will all fall." Williams felt a chill run down his spine. He had seen many horrors in his time as a soldier, but nothing like this. The creature was unstoppable, its power unmatched by anything they had encountered. But Seraphine had given them hope, and they had no intention of backing down. "We fight together," Williams said, his voice filled with resolve. "We're not giving up now. Let's end this." Seraphine nodded. "Together we will." The battle raged on, but the soldiers knew one thing for sure. They had to win. The future of humanity depended on it. The ground trembled beneath the soldiers' feet as the enormous alien war machine advanced, its metallic limbs crashing with each step. The creature was unlike anything the humans had ever seen, its body made of living metal, twisting and shifting in ways that defied logic. It was a weapon of mass destruction, designed to annihilate anything in its path. The soldiers had fought aliens before, but this was something different, something far more dangerous. Sergeant Williams stood with his team, his eyes fixed on the towering creature. His pulse raced as the enormity of the situation settled in. The alien commanders had released this beast as their final weapon, and they had no intention of holding back. It was clear that this was their last attempt to break the human resistance. "We can't defeat this thing with our guns," Williams muttered under his breath. "It's too powerful." Private Carson, who was beside him, looked up at the creature with wide eyes. "What do we do then? It's unstoppable." Seraphine stood next to them, her eyes never leaving the creature. Her face was calm, but there was a certain intensity in her gaze, a quiet understanding of what was at stake. The soldiers had come to rely on her strength, and now they would need her more than ever. "We will stop it," Seraphine said, her voice steady. "But it won't be easy. I can feel the energy of the creature. It's made of the same dark energy I command. This is not a simple weapon. It's alive in its own way." Williams looked at her, disbelief in his eyes. "You can stop it? How?" Seraphine didn't answer immediately. She stepped forward, her hand raised, and for the first time, the soldiers saw her dark energy shimmer around her like a protective shield. It was a sight they had witnessed before in battle, but now there was something different about it. Energy was more focused, more controlled. "I can control the darkness," she explained. "But this creature, it is a reflection of what I once was. It will resist me. I will need your help." The soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. They had seen Seraphine's power, but they had never faced something like this. The creature was an entire army on its own. They couldn't defeat it with just brute force. "How do we help?" Williams asked, his voice firm. Seraphine turned to him, her expression softening for the briefest of moments. "You need to keep its attention on you. Draw it in. I will focus on weakening it. Together, we can bring it down." Williams didn't hesitate. "We'll do whatever it takes." The creature continued its relentless march toward the human camp, its massive feet pounding the earth. Its eyes glowing with an unnatural light locked onto the soldiers. There was no fear in those eyes only, the cold certainty of destruction. Seraphine closed her eyes, drawing in a deep breath. The air around her seemed to grow colder, and the energy within her pulsed, ready to unleash. She stepped forward, her movements fluid as she raised her hand to summon the dark power that had always been her weapon. "Stay together," Williams shouted, rallying the soldiers. They moved into position, forming a line to block the creature's path. Their weapons were ready, but they knew they were no match for the sheer size and strength of the alien beast. The creature roared, a deafening sound that sent vibrations through the ground. It charged forward, swinging its massive arms, each blow shaking the earth. The soldiers fired, but their weapons had no effect on its thick, armored exterior. Seraphine moved with the speed of a shadow, darting forward as the creature raised its arm to strike. She released a surge of dark energy, sending it crashing into the creature's side. For a moment, the creature faltered, its movements slowing as the energy sapped its strength. But it wasn't enough. The creature roared in fury and turned toward Seraphine, its eyes burning with hatred. It raised its arm, preparing to strike, but the soldiers weren't about to let it. They launched a coordinated attack, firing everything they had at the beast in an attempt to keep its attention focused on them. "Now," Williams shouted, signaling the team to pull back. The soldiers retreated as the creature swiped at them, narrowly missing. Seraphine took the opportunity to close the distance, her energy crackling around her as she directed another blast at the creature's core. The energy surged through the creature's body. It fought back with a violent force, its limbs thrashing. "You need to keep it distracted," Seraphine urged, her voice strained. "It's too strong for me to take down alone." The soldiers didn't hesitate. They charged forward again, using their weapons and tactics to draw the creature's attention away from Seraphine. They had learned to trust her, to follow her lead, and now they were willing to do whatever it took to help her. The battle raged on, with the soldiers continuing to engage the creature, their tactics growing more refined as they worked together. Seraphine's energy continued to weaken the creature, but it wasn't until the final blow that it began to falter. With a final surge of power, Seraphine focused all her energy into one last attack. Her dark energy collided with the creature's core, and for a brief moment, the creature paused, its form writhing in agony. Then, with a deafening crash, the creature collapsed to the ground, its massive body crumbling under the weight of the energy that had consumed it. The soldiers stood in silence, their breaths heavy with exhaustion. The battlefield was quiet now, the air thick with the aftermath of the fight. They had won. It stopped the creature. Seraphine had paid a heavy price. She collapsed to her knees, her energy depleted. The soldiers rushed to her side, their concern evident. "You did it," Williams said, his voice filled with awe. Seraphine looked up at him, her face pale, but there was a faint smile on her lips. "We did it," she whispered. "Together." Soldiers helped her to her feet, supporting her as she stood. The war wasn't over, but this battle had been won. The legacy of the alien king had been fulfilled, and humanity had proven its strength. Not just through its weapons, but through its unity. Seraphine had given them the strength they needed. Together, they had faced the darkness and won. But, as the sun rose over the battlefield, they knew that the fight was far from over. There were still many more battles to come, and they would face them together, with Seraphine by their side.